So let's talk a little bit. Let's go back to the host pools a little bit, because I think there might be some questions regarding that. You know, you have static pools versus dynamic pools. Let's talk a little bit about in what scenarios those might be appropriate.
I would say in most cases, leveraging a dynamic host pool would be the most bang for your buck. You would be able to set rules based upon either CPU utilization or time. So let's give an example here. So if you have an influx of users that are leveraging your platform, or a VDI platform, you could set a scale stating that once we hit 80% utilization, we'll start spinning up another VM to start encompassing that extra traffic, so your users will have minimal latency. Or being able to set specific times of, you know, that your users are going to be logging in at 8 a.m. in the morning, start spinning up your VMs at 7:30 a.m. and you're going to be able to have that capability to turn it off at 5 p.m. and save some money and non-utilized resources turning them off. So there's some options there for dynamic scaling. For static scaling, it's going to be for more often your special applications where you need a specific box and a resource one-to-one to your user. You won't have the scalability options as you would in a dynamic host pool, but you're going to have the capability of ensuring that a user that may be using a compute or GPU intensive workload would have that singular focus.
Right. Yeah, and we recently had a customer that uses a lot of CAD software, and we needed to take that approach. So, and it's interesting to see what kind of workloads our customers are using in these environments.
Right.
And it makes sense for, you know, setting up maybe a piece of software that's a high ticket price. You know, say you have 100 users, but you rarely will see, you know, maybe 20 users using this piece of software, whether it be Photoshop, AutoCAD, Visual Studio. If you deploy this application as a remote app, you can make sure that you're not buying 100 pieces of 100 licenses for your piece of software that might cost you $100,000 when you could buy 20 and, you know, save your company $80,000 on setting up a remote app and making sure that capacity limit's being hit before you invest in further licensing. One use case there.
And that goes back to the app groups, being able to provision which users you would like, depending on those app groups. So you don't have to provision to everyone. You can select certain users at certain times to be able to leverage.
Sure. You know, and another thing that I think we lose sight of is, you know, we've been talking about the Windows Virtual Desktop, and everybody thinks of that as a desktop environment, but we do have the capabilities of using this technology for remote apps too. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So one of our customers that we recently had a successful WVD deployment, they have external customers, and they have zero interest in supporting anything more than their internally developed application. It's a logistical piece of software that once the user, you know, subscribes and is a customer of theirs, they provide the WVD remote app capabilities that just launch the piece of software on their computer. They don't have a full desktop OS that they have to worry about troubleshooting or managing. They don't have to worry about licensing that software for, you know, their external users. All they're worried about is their specific piece of software. And they were the most interested in using OneDrive in conjunction with their remote app capabilities. So they usually dealt with users that had low latency connections to their traditional remote desktop applications. So anytime they're transferring over data to the customer, it would take a long time. So with OneDrive, they were able to work in conjunction with the remote app, have the OneDrive files uploaded and able to be accessed quickly from the Azure hosted WVD remote app sessions.
So that probably didn't. It helped with latency, but it likely helped with cost too, right? Because of the you're using the Microsoft backbone coming from OneDrive.
Definitely, and the scaling ability is something they were interested in as well.
Sure. So With that being said, now we've already chatted about, you know, the different devices that you can access this, you know, whether it's Android or iOS or a PC. I mean, what is needed essentially to access this? Let's say if we're sitting down as a user, what does that user experience look like? Is there a client? Do they access it through a browser? I'm sure people are curious on how that works.
Yeah, so you have two options with WVD. You would be able to log in through the web portal as well, using your credentials and being able to use and log into your remote desktop pane of view, right? It'll be a window with your objects in there being, you know, VDI remote apps that you decided to provision, or you could do your traditional RDS local client as well to be able to log in as well.
Sure.
Yeah, it's super convenient. Piggybacking off of what Jose is saying, there's so many times where, you know, me being in IT, I get a call from, you know, the help desk or supervisor saying, hey, I need you to restart this computer or you know, disable this user, enable this user, reset a password, unlock a user account, you know, instead of, you know, pulling out my laptop, launching it from my mobile phone, signing in pretty quickly, seamlessly, low latency, able to get that pretty user-friendly UI and accomplish my task pretty quickly. So the convenience is awesome, and it's definitely been a lifesaver a few times. You know, it's Sunday, you're at the park with your kids, and you know you need to log into your desktop and attach a PDF and you know forward it off to a potential customer. It's awesome.
So, you know, between the browser, for example, and you know, there's that Windows virtual desktop client that the person, a fat client that has to be downloaded. What could potentially be the user experience difference between those two?
Not much, really. Besides an initial setup to make sure your local workstation is RDS capable. I don't know, Jose. I can't think of anything else that would. It would just be a simple login with your credentials either way.
They're pretty comparable. They're easy. They're both easy to use, easy to log in. One benefit that I noticed with the fat client is you're able to share your whatever host you're launching it from. So my Windows 10 machine, I was able to see my local resources, so my my local drive, and I know there is capability to actually print as well if that is selected from a user. So say you have a local printer in your house and you're running WVD. You're actually able to go to, you know, Notepad or Word or Excel and print to your local devices. So I don't believe that capability is available on the web client.
Sure. You know, one of the thoughts that I had as well is that if you have power users that need like a GPU enabled machine, the fat client seems to work a lot better.
Definitely. Makes sense.
Well, besides the things that we've covered here today, are there any other thoughts? Like, how about the barrier of entry? Like when somebody is thinking about Windows Virtual Desktop for the first time, like are there some low-hanging fruit prerequisites that they need to be aware of?
Making sure to have connectivity to a domain controller, Active Directory. Making sure that the appropriate access is available to be able to do an initial setup. Global admin as of now is required. However, that may be changing in the near future. A file server, either in Azure itself or on-premise as well. Communication with a site-to-site VPN gateway would be necessary if you wanted to leverage on-premise resources. Those are the big call-outs that I can think of in terms of what you need to be aware of before getting started.
Sure.
And I think that most customers, if you're already in Azure, you have most of those capabilities already enabled. Once we're set up and running, the actual maintenance or setup after that's completed, I find it very hands-off. With most of my customers, probably about a 1 hour knowledge transfer, and they feel pretty comfortable, you know, managing WVD after that. So administratively, the effort is low once it's implemented and set up.
Right.
Sure. So is there anything else that you guys can think of that we probably should give them forewarning? And of course, if people are watching this, they can always and it sounds a little daunting, they can always reach out to Stratum Technology to get this type of assistance. We're happy to help where we can. But is there anything else that you can think of, that questions that we should have asked or answered here today?
Not at the top of my head. I think for a general overview, without getting too much into the weeds of it, I think this is a good intro.
Yeah.
Some closing thoughts. So maybe we could edit this at the end. But if for whatever reason you might be afraid of going to Windows 10, Windows 7 is supported and extended support with WVD.
Good call out.
So
yeah.
if you have
that's a great call out, because if there's a lot of corporations who are still on Windows 7 and it's no longer supported, this is a way to get around that into that extended support scenario.
Right.
So definitely take that into consideration if that's one of the caveats that's preventing you from moving.
Thank you for watching Stratum's Cloud Interrupted. If you like what you see, please subscribe, like, and share this video.